The first time Lanson Avery stepped foot on the Tyrellian medical cruiser, he was already sweating through his shirt. Not because of fear, although the towering, translucent blue nurse with 4 eyes and a voice like a foghorn wasn't exactly comforting, but because of the stomach cramps that had started on the shuttle and gotten worse with every hour. "Sit," the nurse said, or rather bellowed, gesturing to a reclining platform that looked more like an art installation than a medical bed. Lanson did as he was told, gritting his teeth as another wave of pain pulled across his abdomen like a hot wire. He'd been on the Galactic Exchange Station less than 2 days, and already something had decided to make itself at home in his guts. The nurse scanned him with a device that resembled a musical instrument, then tapped a rhythm on the surface. A low chime answered. "You're scheduled with Dr. Yalrex. Wait here." She left, and Lanson clutched his midsection, trying to remember if the noodles he'd eaten the night before had a weird aftertaste. Maybe the translucent sauce wasn't supposed to glow. The door hissed open, and in strode Dr. Yalrex, a tall, willowy being with skin the color of rust and a head shaped like a stretched teardrop. He wore a dark robe with silver trim, and a series of tiny floating drones orbited his shoulders like loyal pets. "Human Lanson Avery," Yalrex said. "You are experiencing abdominal distress. I have reviewed the preliminary scan." Lanson nodded. "Yeah, it's like someone lit a campfire in there and then invited all their friends." Yalrex blinked slowly, then gestured to his drones. They glided down and began scanning Lanson more thoroughly, beams of soft light passing over his body. After a few minutes, one of the drones beeped and projected a rotating 3D image of Lanson's digestive tract, complete with a long, wriggling shape nestled in his intestines. Yalrex's tone dropped. "You were infected with an organism classified as Class 7 intestinal invader, designation, Zilther larvae. It is known to burrow through organic tissue, disrupt neural pathways, and ultimately rupture vital organs. Prognosis without intervention is terminal." Lanson stared at the image, then back at the doctor. That's just a tapeworm." Yalrex tilted his head. "Excuse me. A tapeworm? I've had one before. Well, not me personally, but I know people who have. It's gross, sure, but not lethal. You just, I don't know, take some meds, maybe get a cleanse, and it's gone." Yalrex stared at him, then turned to one of his drones and issued a series of low, vibrating commands. The drone projected a comparison chart of various parasitic species. Lanson pointed at one. "That's the one. Looks like a flat noodle." "I'm serious, Doc. This isn't a death sentence, it's just a crappy Tuesday." Yalrex was not convinced. "This organism does not match any known benign parasite we have observed in your species. Its biological structure suggests high aggression." "Well, yeah, it's a parasite. That's kinda their thing." Yalrex turned and left the room without a word. Lanson was left staring at the floating hologram of his own intestines. 10 minutes later, things escalated. 2 more aliens entered, one a hulking, armor-plated being with a single eye in the middle of its forehead, and the other a spindly medic holding a containment pod. "We are preparing for invasive extraction," the medic said. Whoa, hold on," Lanson said, sitting up. "I didn't agree to any surgery. Dr. Yalrex has determined immediate removal is necessary. Can I just talk to him first?" The medic turned to the larger alien. A brief exchange followed in clicks and tones. The big one stepped out. Moments later, Yalrex returned, hands clasped behind his back. "I admire your calm," Yalrex said. "Most species panic at the mention of Zilther. That's 'cause most species probably don't have Taco Tuesdays." Yalrex blinked again. "You are suggesting this organism is common among humans?" "Not exactly common, but we've dealt with worse. There's this thing called the botfly." "Enough," Yalrex interrupted. "If you are correct, why is this species not documented in any of our Earth records?" "Because we don't usually end up on galactic medical ships when we get one. We just go to a pharmacy." Yalrex looked genuinely disturbed. "You treat internal invaders at civilian shops?" "Yeah, aisle 4, right next to the antacids." Yalrex turned to the medic. "Delay extraction. We require a sample of Earth's medical response." Lanson slumped in relief. I can get you the name of the medication. I've got a cousin who took it after eating undercooked pork. We will need a specimen of the treatment. Until then, you will be quarantined. Quarantined? Ulrich gestured to the walls. Panels slid open, revealing a sealed space with a bed, monitor, and a small window. For your safety and ours. Lanson groaned as he stood. His abdomen still throbbed. You know, I was hoping to spend this week exploring the Nebula Gardens. That will not be possible until we determine whether or not your parasite intends to consume your liver. Inside the quarantine room, Lanson settled onto the bed and watched the monitor. A small camera tracked his movements. Every few hours, a drone floated in to scan him, and once a day, Ulrich returned for updates. After 3 days, the pain began to subside. Ulrich stared at the latest scans. The organism has not burrowed. It remains stationary. This contradicts every known behavior of the Zilther. Maybe it's full, Lanson offered. I had a double portion of those noodles before this started. You continue to make light of your condition. I'm not making light. I'm just saying, maybe it's not what you think. Ulrich's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. We have contacted Earth's medical authorities. They confirmed your species possesses multiple strains of internal parasites with minimal lethality. Our classification system requires revision. Lanson smiled weakly. Told you. Tapeworm. But it is not entirely harmless. You are still experiencing fatigue and nutrient loss. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a party. Just not. You know, a death sentence. Ulrich studied him silently. You are an unusual species. Thanks. That was not a compliment. Over the next few days, Ulrich began inviting other researchers to observe Lanson. A rotating group of alien doctors peered through the observation window or joined Ulrich during examinations. They asked questions. Lots of them. How do humans survive with such internal stressors? Why would any species tolerate a parasite this size? Do you not fear it reaching your brain? To each, Lanson gave the same kind of answers. We have immune systems, medicines, and sometimes it just leaves on its own. One particularly curious doctor, a feathery creature named Kilu, requested a demonstration of Earth's treatment methods. Lanson described the anti-parasitic medication in detail, even drawing the pill shape on a napkin. Kilu looked horrified. You ingest a substance that poisons the parasite? Yeah. It dies and then exits through your digestive tract? Correct. Kilu looked ready to faint. Eventually, Ulrich cleared him from quarantine. While we cannot fully understand your biology, the organism has displayed none of the lethal traits we feared. You may go. Lanson stood carefully. Great. I need a real meal and maybe a nap. Your resilience is concerning. Hey, Doc, sometimes it's not about resilience. Sometimes it's just about having the right kind of stubborn stomach. Ulrich gave a slow nod. I suspect we will be studying you for some time. Lanson walked out of the medbay, rubbing his stomach and hoping the parasite didn't decide to throw a farewell party on the way out. He had a tour of the Nebula Gardens to catch up on. Lanson had barely been out of quarantine for 6 minutes when a pair of small, spherical drones began following him through the corridor like curious pets. They made soft clicking noises and occasionally projected brief flashes of light onto his back as if scanning him for signs of imminent collapse. He turned and waved them off. I'm not going to explode, you know. The drones chirped at each other and floated higher, maintaining a respectful, if persistent, distance. A squat, moss-green alien with a shell-like carapace and multiple antennae intercepted him near the lift alcove. You are the one with the internal invader, it said, voice warbling like a flute being played underwater. That's me. Parasite of the week. I am Vobral. I teach comparative pathogenesis at the Intergalactic Medical Institute. May I examine your waist? Lanson blinked. I'm sorry, what? You are still digesting, yes? The organism will excrete metabolic byproducts. I wish to analyze them. Right. Well, I was planning on using the restroom alone, but thanks for the offer. Vobral's antennae twitched. I will provide a sterile collection vessel. Nice to meet you, Vobral, Lanson muttered, already backing into the lift. Gotta go, not literally, just away. The doors closed, and the lift carried him upward with a faint hum. He emerged on deck 17, which smelled vaguely of citrus and was lit by panels that shifted hue every few minutes. It was apparently designed to simulate the circadian rhythms of 7 different species, none of which were human. A tall, resin-skinned diplomat named Thillen spotted him near the observation gallery and waved with 2 of its 6 arms. You are the human who survived the Zilther larva? Lanson exhaled. It wasn't a Zilther, just a tapeworm. Earth thing. Thillen leaned closer. Is it true you did not require surgical removal? Correct, Lanson said, rubbing his temple. We've got pills for that. Or, sometimes it just comes out the natural way. Thillen's eyes narrowed in fascination. You expel it voluntarily? Not voluntarily. It's kind of like a really bad checkout process. Thillen furrowed its brow ridge. Fascinating. Your species appears to have evolved a tolerance for internal colonization. We try not to make a habit of it. May I invite you to speak at the next cross-species resilience colloquium? Lanson paused. Is there food? There will be a buffet. Count me in. 3 hours later, he was seated in a transparent chair shaped like a spiral shell, facing a semicircle of alien scholars, most of whom were taking notes with tendrils, styluses, or by blinking in complicated patterns. A projection of his initial intestinal skin hovered in the air behind him, rotating slowly. Yalrex stood off to the side, arms folded, observing. The moderator, a gelatinous being named Ort, addressed Lanson in careful, measured tones. Please explain how your species manages internal infestation without systemic collapse. Lanson cleared his throat. Well, first off, we've got an immune system. It's not perfect, but it keeps most things from turning us into soup. For parasites, we've developed treatments that target them without destroying our own tissue. We use chemicals designed to disrupt their ability to absorb nutrients or reproduce. A feathery researcher raised a wing. Do these chemicals not also damage your own cells? They're selective. Took a few decades of trial and error. The early ones weren't great. Lot of vomiting. But now? 1 dose, 2 if it's stubborn, and you're clean. A ripple of whispers passed through the audience. A metallic voice from a cube-shaped entity near the back rang out. Describe the expulsion process in detail. Lanson scratched his cheek. You're not gonna like it. We are scientists, the cube replied. Okay. So, after the parasite dies, it detaches from the intestinal wall. Then the body pushes it out. Same as anything else we don't need. Several of the aliens made low keening sounds. One fainted. Ort's gelatinous form shifted colors. Your digestive tract is utilized for both nutrient absorption and waste expulsion? Yep. One long tube. Stuff goes in, gets processed, leftovers come out. Pretty efficient, actually. Yalrex stepped forward. You omitted this detail in quarantine. Lanson shrugged. Didn't think I needed to explain basic plumbing. The cube beeped again. Do you not consider this dual-function system a vulnerability? We've managed okay. I mean, yeah, it's gross, but it works. You should see what we do with fermented cabbage. The audience murmured again, a mixture of awe and mild revulsion. Ort pulsated thoughtfully. Your species appears unusually tolerant of internal discomfort. Well, we don't enjoy it. We just don't panic every time something weird happens inside us. We've got worse stuff. Brain parasites, face mites, that one fungus that eats your toenails. Most people just deal with it and keep going to work. A long silence followed. Yalrex turned to the others. I propose we reclassify the Zilther-like organism found in human Lanson Avery as a Class 2 Earth variant commensal parasite, pending further study. A crystalline being clicked in agreement. It is clear the human digestive tract is not only hostile to intruders, but also capable of adapting to them. Lanson leaned back in his chair. That's us. Adapt or die. The colloquium ended with a cautious round of applause. some participants using limbs Lanson couldn't identify. Later that evening, Lanson sat alone in the Habitat Lounge, sipping a lukewarm nutrient blend from a flexible pouch. The room's walls displayed a simulated Earth-forest cycling between dawn and dusk every few minutes. It was supposed to be calming, but the rapid transitions gave Lanson a headache. Yalrex entered carrying a slim tablet. He sat beside Lanson without asking. You have become a topic of academic interest across 3 quadrants. Well, I've always dreamed of being famous for my intestines. There is one unresolved matter. Lanson raised an eyebrow. Do I want to hear it? Your body has begun to produce antibodies specific to the parasite. That's good, right? It is. Unexpected. The antibodies are not only neutralizing the organism, but also rendering it inert at the molecular level. It appears your immune system is learning in real time. Lanson blinked. You're saying I'm building a defense against tapeworms? Not just this one. Potentially all intestinal helminths. Lanson sipped his drink. I should sell that. Bottle it up, call it GastroGuard. Yalrex ignored the joke. We would like a sample of your blood. And possibly your bone marrow. That a request or a demand? A compensated request. How compensated? Yalrex named a figure that Lanson didn't recognize but assumed was generous based on the sudden sparkle in his tablet's display. Throw in a ticket back to Earth and a year's supply of real coffee, and you've got a deal. Yalrex nodded. Agreed. As the doctor left to prepare the necessary equipment, Lanson leaned back and watched the forest simulation flicker through another artificial sunrise. Somewhere in his gut, the last remnants of the parasite were being quietly dismantled by his immune system. He tapped his pouch against the armrest in a silent toast. Here's to human biology, he muttered. Ugly, stubborn, and surprisingly effective. For days had passed since the colloquium, and Lanson had developed a subtle twitch in his left eye. Not from stress, not directly, it was from the sheer volume of requests. Blood samples, stool samples, saliva, sweat. One particularly enthusiastic aquatic researcher had even tried to collect his exhaled breath in a crystal bell jar. He was pacing the perimeter of the station's botanical wing, which had been reconfigured as a temporary acclimatization zone. For him, a term that apparently meant somewhere we can keep you without a dozen beings asking to swab your eyebrows. The space was humid, filled with spiraling vines and bioluminescent mosses, and smelled faintly of cinnamon and wet stone. Yalrex arrived unannounced, stepping lightly through the mulch-covered path. His robe was gone, replaced by a simple tunic and a small satchel slung over one shoulder. You're sweating more than earlier, he said without preamble. It's hot in here, and I've been walking in circles trying to avoid another surprise urine requisition. Yalrex opened the satchel and withdrew a narrow case. No more samples. I've brought your results. Lanson stopped pacing. Of what? Everything. Your blood work, antibody profile, immune markers, microbiome sequencing. We've cross-referenced it with every known pathogen in our database. And you are, biologically speaking, a paradox. Lanson sat down on a moss-covered bench that squelched unpleasantly. You'll have to be more specific. My gym teacher used to say that too. Your immune response was not only effective, it was preemptive. You began producing neutralizing agents before we administered any therapy. That should not happen in a first encounter. I've been sick before. Not with this. The larval entity inside you is genetically distinct from Earth-based tapeworms. Nearly 70% variance. And yet, your body treated it like an old adversary. Lanson scratched his jaw. So what are you saying? I've got déjà vu antibodies. Yalrex paused before sitting beside him, something he hadn't done until now. We believe your immune system has developed a sort of generalist pattern recognition. It doesn't wait for full identification, it goes on instinct. That sounds kind of cool. It is also dangerous. In other species, such aggressive response often leads to autoimmune collapse. But your system moderates itself mid-process. It's like watching a demolition crew carefully dismantle a building while it's still occupied. You're saying my body's polite? Efficient. Brutally so. It knows when to stop. Lanson leaned back and exhaled. So I'm healthy? Extremely. Though I would advise against eating any more bioluminescent food. No promises. Ulrich opened the case fully and handed Lanson a data slate. There's more. We found something embedded in your gut flora. Please don't say it's another parasite. A protein marker. Manufactured. Not native to your biology. Lanson's face twitched. Manufactured by who? Unknown. But it resembles early-stage gene therapy agents. The kind used on Earth before your species developed targeted editing. I've never had gene therapy. Then this was likely inherited. Lanson looked at the slate, scrolling through the dense charts and figures. You're saying someone messed with my ancestors' DNA? Possibly. Or perhaps one of your grandparents received treatment and passed the modification down. The marker's dormant, but it activates under stress. Like a parasite. So I'm a walking science project. You're a product of resilience layered over generations. Medical intervention, environmental pressure, dietary inconsistency. Your body has become a patchwork of survival traits. That is not criticism, it's admiration. Lanson closed the slate and handed it back. So what now? You've got all your data. Do I get a certificate or something? We are submitting your case to the Central Bioethics Archive. With your consent, of course. As long as they don't try to clone me. That has been prohibited since the Great Replication Incident. What happened? Let's just say the original did not appreciate meeting 12 versions of himself at a birthday party. Lanson chuckled, then rubbed the back of his neck. You know, when I first came aboard, I thought I was going to die surrounded by strangers cutting me open with laser scalpels. You nearly did. If we had proceeded with standard extraction, your intestinal lining would have ruptured from the shock. Well, that's comforting. Ulrich stood. You are free to leave the station at your discretion. No further tests are required. Lanson stood too, brushing dried moss from his pants. I was thinking of heading back to Earth. Maybe get a burger that doesn't glow. I would suggest a detox period first. Yeah, I probably shouldn't reintroduce my gut to chili cheese fries right away. Ulrich offered a small nod. You have altered our understanding of human biology. And perhaps our approach to all species with variable metabolic responses. Lanson tilted his head. You mean stubborn species? Adaptable ones? It is not a trait we often respect. We focus instead on purity, predictability. But survival rarely favors those qualities. I'll take that as a compliment. It was intended as one. They walked back toward the lift together, their footsteps muffled by the soft mulch. Ulrich said nothing more, and Lanson didn't push it. The silence was comfortable for once. Hours later, Lanson stood in the departure bay, holding a small bag that contained exactly one clean shirt, a sealed Earth-safe nutrient bar, and a souvenir badge that read Galactic Resilience Symposium Honorary Participant. A boarding steward with metallic skin and a gentle demeanor scanned his ID. Destination? Earth. Southern Hemisphere. The steward nodded and motioned him aboard. Inside the shuttle, Lanson took a window seat. The stars outside blinked in and out of view as the station's rotation adjusted the angle. He watched them with a new kind of curiosity, not the wide-eyed wonder he'd arrived with, but something quieter, more deliberate. As the engines hummed to life and the ship detached, he felt a faint twist in his abdomen. Not pain, just a reminder. A memory of the visitor that had once taken up residence there. He placed a hand on his stomach and smiled faintly. Don't come back. The stars stretched into lines, and the shuttle jumped. Back toward home. Back toward gravity, weather, and food that didn't require bioluminescent disclaimers. Lanson leaned back and closed his eyes, already rehearsing how he'd explain this to his cousin who still thought gluten was a conspiracy. He'd keep it simple. I got sick, he'd say. And then I got better. That's just what we do.